So let's take a look at Shovel Knight, Shovel of Hope.
Excuse me, what the actual fuck you doing in my house?
Alright, finally got that done. Now I can start working on the battle tendency. What?
I said, what are you doing in my house?
I think the better question is, why did you stand there for 14 minutes and watch me review Shovel Knight?
Because it's polite. Why are you here?
I'm here to get the birthday present that you didn't give me, so I broke in to see where you were hiding it.
Oh,
It's not on your computer, is it?
here you go.
What? What? Part 2? I already own this stuff! Why did you give this to me? I'm pretty sure you own like 4 different copies of them! I have all this at home! Where'd you get this?
Oh, here's this.
What? You got me the Season 1 This is Alpha on TV! This isn't even Season 1! It's Season 2! Why'd you get... Shit out of here. Okay, so what? You brought me the Part 2 books? Why? Why'd you give me the books?
Because you're making a battle tendency video and didn't invite me.
I thought you hated Part 2.
I do, so let's talk about it.
Alright, sure. This is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Battle Tendency with this guy. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Battle Tendency was released in 1987, right after Hirohiko Araki was finished with Phantom Blood. Similar to Part 1, Part 2 had an alternate title when it was first being released. That title was JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 2 Joseph Joestar, His Proud Lineage. As if Part 1 wasn't mouthy enough, right? This is of course the second part to my Phantom Blood video, which was torn to hell and back thanks to YouTube's copyright system. So please, forgive me if I can't use anime footage in this video, because chances are, YouTube will cut it to ribbons with no regard for video flow. So with my very energetic co-host besides me, let's dig into the story of Battle Tendency.
I'm just going to be popping in every now and then to give my thoughts on flaws the story may have as a whole. I also will be talking about some good things too. But let's get into it.
It's 50 years after Phantom Blood. Jonathan Joestar is dead, and the surviving cast is now looking pretty old. Speedwagon is now a grand oil tycoon thanks to some adventures in America, but has once again fallen into something bizarre. For help, he's called upon Straitso, his old friend and living hormone master from Phantom Blood. They're of course happy to see one another, but there's no time for a cheery reunion as Speedwagon has called him, and some hormone monks in training, to Mexico for an important meeting. This is also the perfect moment for Straitso to announce that he is changing teams and brutally kills his teammates, injures Speedwagon, and then reveals that he secretly wanted the power and youth that Dio had when he used the mask. So with the blood of his former friends, he activates the masks and himself becomes a vampire. Speedwagon blacks out, with his only thoughts being of the now endangered Arena and Joseph Joestar. Speaking of the Joestars, they've moved to New York City thanks to Speedwagon setting them up. They're family after all. This is about the time that we meet our hero who is browsing the streets of New York for cola when his wallet is stolen by a thief named Smokey Brown. Smokey is stopped by some racist cops, this is 1939 after all, but is saved by our hero thanks to some hormone-flavored soda. They run away and eventually formally meet. Our hero is Joseph Joestar of England, grandson of Jonathan and Arena Joestar. His parents both died when he was too young to remember them, and apparently is incredibly talented with hormone, being born with the ability to use the ancient powers. At this point, Araki has dropped the need to learn the martial art of Sendo, with Hamon now taking on the role of life energy. However, to utilize it to its fullest potential, you must undergo some intense training.
Here's an optimal time to bring up that the 2013 anime cleans up most of the technical issues the manga suffers from, because in the original medium we keep jumping back and forth between Speedwagon in Mexico and Joseph in New York for the first 2 chapters. This is not only breaks the tension of Speedwagon's predicament, but also is really disorienting timeline-wise. The weird New York mob guy tells Erina and Joseph about Speedwagon dying like 10 pages after we see it. Also, the plane flashback that Speedwagon has is pointless, and the first thing we see Joseph do is a hormone trick with the Coke bottle. Not only is it pointless, but it's handled so clumsily that Strizo even says, sorry for the abrupt change in topic, and Speedwagon even acknowledges that this isn't the time. What's it for? Is it so that we know that Strizo knows that Joseph can use Hamon? As the Grand Hamon Master, shouldn't Strizo know that Hamon can be passed on through blood? This is also where we see the biggest recurring issue I have with Part 2 for the first time. The fact that the fight is won by something completely nonsensical and unpredictable just so Jojo can seem clever. We'll come back to this later because it gets a lot worse, trust me.
Figuring that Straizo's after them, Marina stays put in their apartment while Joseph is out on the town with Smokey, knowing that he'll be the bigger target. After pulling out a Tommy gun and blasting the vampire to bits when they finally meet, Joseph is ready to lay the final blow to the vampire to avenge his Uncle Speedwagon. While the Tommy gun was awesome, it had little effect on the vampire, who was able to take minimal damage. Straizo wastes no time and pulls out the Space Ripper Stingy Eyes on Joseph, feeling that he won't waste time trying to figure out his new powers when threats to his life still exist. Joseph is able to counter this by using some mirror trick and hits him with a Hamon Blast. This doesn't work, so Joseph instead uses a grenade trick and utterly destroys Straizo and what was left of the cafe as well. We also learn of a new Joestar technique, the art of running away! Joseph and Smokey run to what I presume to be the Brooklyn Bridge, but as it turns out, Straizo is already there waiting for them with a hostage in tow. Joseph breaks into a frenzy when she's hurt and manages to defeat the once good Hamon Master by anticipating the overuse of the laser eyes. Near death, Straizo tells Joseph of the Pillar Man and how they will soon meet. He also informs Joseph that Speedwagon survived and is being held captive in Mexico by a hidden group of Nazi soldiers. They built a secret base in Mexico to analyze the unknown. This includes the Pillar Man, which they have excavated from the Aztec temple, along with a stone mask to use for testing.
I brought up how the anime fixes many technical problems the manga has, and the Strizo fight is where we can indisputably see that in the art. The manga has many confusing panel layouts and angles that are handled a lot better in the animation. However, the ass pulling is in full force here, and there's no way to fix that without ripping the foundation of battle tendency out. The Tommy gun and grenades are left purposely unexplained for comedy's sake. I guess it is pretty random XD. The old anime trope of a side character narrating the battle like a sports announcer rears its head here too, and is kind of the only reason Smokey is even in the story. I'm not gonna harp on Jojo for being laden with tropes though, it is an anime after all.
Speedwagon meets with Major Rudolf von Stroheim, who proudly exclaims that anything German is the best in the world, and that they've revived him with German medicine to make him tell everything, from the stone masks to the Joestars. Speaking of the Joestars, Joseph Joestar makes his way to the German base thanks to his amazing talent for disguise.
All I've got under my skirt is more tequila, big boy. Is it all right to bring that through too?
The Pillarman, known as San Viento, awakens. Yes, I'm aware that his Japanese name is Santana, what with all musical themes going on, but seeing as how I've gotten these names and everything else through my Jojonium books and the anime, this is what I'll be using. Plus, San Viento makes more sense because von Stroheim names him after the Mexican winds, and they are in Mexico. In any case, San Viento escapes and murders some of the German soldiers. He makes a move on Stroheim and Speedwagon, but Joseph gets rid of his disguise and uses a Hamon hair attack to create a barrier. Joseph gets the bright idea to use the sun itself to put an end to San Viento's short reign of terror. San Viento does everything in his power to stop this from happening, going as far as slinking inside of Major von Stroheim to shield himself from the sunlight. Von Stroheim is still being used as a skin puppet and prepares to blow himself up with a caber, but not before he tells Joseph of 3 more Pillar Men that they found in Italy and that will also awaken soon. He blows up before Joseph can get any more answers for him, with San Viento being exposed and quickly turning to stone. Joseph stops San Viento escaping by simply jumping into a well, and the ultimate life form is reduced to the ultimate statue. What's left of his body is brought to the Speedwagon Foundation labs and is held under constant UV light for testing. This is also the last time you see him, as he's never brought up again, and as far as we know, he's still alive in there. However, seeing as how later parts progressed, you can probably tell why he never comes back.
San Viento's term of the story displays one of my favorite parts in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure that is often overlooked because everyone is a bandwagoner who only watches the anime where this aspect often gets butchered or censored to hell. Body horror! This is something that was pretty present in Phantom Blood, with the vampires and the human dog head man. It even showed up in previous act where Strizo pulled himself back together after being blown up, but Araki really flexes those horror muscles here with San Viento. The way he absorbs the entire vampire with his body, how he crunches through the vents to escape, extending his appendages to hit Jojo, and especially how he controls Stroheim from the inside. Woo! Mamma mia, that's a spicy body horror! Unfortunately, none of the other Pillar Men do anything nearly this cool, and in fact we don't see anything this cool until like part 5. Presumably because Araki's editor was like, hey, could you maybe stop with the aspects of your action-adventure manga that make me terrified to exist inside a vessel of flesh? It doesn't sell too well. So unfortunately, he toned it down a lot after part 2. Yeah, there's stuff like Yellow Temperance and Okuyasu's dad, but that's mostly played for laughs. Now I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's go to Europe.
Speedwagon and Joseph head over to Italy to meet someone they believe can help with their Pillarman problem. The man in question is Caesar Antonio Zeppeli, grandson of Baron Zeppeli, the same man that helped Jojo train to defeat Dio. Sometime before they arrive, the Pillarmen have already awakened. When some German soldiers were doing research on them, the one in the middle woke up and murdered all of them by blocking the UV lamps with their blood and draining their energy. With his powers restored, he awakens his masters. Wamu, AC/DC, and Cars return to the world of the living!
Caesar!
Wamu is an honorable fighter and agrees to let Caesar try and fight against him. He fails, so Joseph tries his hand all the same and actually does some damage thanks to his clacker volley move that he somehow came up with within the span of a day. Wamu admires Joseph for actually managing to hurt him, but soon goes in for the kill! That is, until Joseph tells Wamu that if he were given a little more time, he'd totally kick his ass. Wamu likes this idea, seeing as how he hasn't had a real fight in like thousands of years. AC/DC also likes this idea, so he allows Wamu to do so, and to ensure that Joseph keeps up his end of the bargain, he gives Joseph the wedding ring of death.
Guess where it goes? A hint, not on your finger.
What?
This baby goes right into Joseph's heart, and after 30 days, it will melt and poison the young Joestar. Then, just to be an asshole, AC/DC implants his own wedding ring on Joseph's neck, meaning that he has to beat both Wamu and AC/DC if he wants to survive. This gives Caesar the idea to introduce Jojo to the person that coached him in the art of Hamon, so they make their way to Air Sapina Island. There, they meet the Hamon coach waiting for them, who reveals herself to be Lisa! Nobody knows her real name or where she came from. All that matters is that she's a martial arts master and totally rocks her Hamon abilities. Locking Joseph's mouth with a rebreather device to correct the flow of air in his lungs, she begins training both Joseph and Caesar.
Right around this time in the story is where you're probably going to ask a very big question. It's a question that many JoJo fans have asked over the years, and only the dedicated to decipher the answer to. Why does Joseph have a hat and goggles? Well, luckily within the pages of the JoJonium releases, printed nearly 30 years after its initial publication, we finally have an answer from series creator Hirohiko Araki to help differentiate him from Jonathan. Great mysteries finally solved.
Time skip forward through their training, and only 6 days left until the rings dissolve and kill Joseph, and it seems his final training is at hand. For the final test, Machina will fight Caesar, and Logs will fight Joseph. This is all well and good for Caesar, who underwent the same training as Joseph, of course. But speaking of Joseph, his final test was a bit harder. In the arena where he was going to fight Logs, instead he finds Logs' dead body. AC/DC had managed to sneak in during the night and killed Logs while he was on the hunt for something. A detail I skimmed out on was the ultimate goal of the Pillarman, this being the Red Stone of Asia, a flawless ruby that's capable of amplifying Hamon a billion times stronger than that of any man or magnifying glass. The Pillarmen, more specifically Cars, created the stone masks in an attempt to further themselves in the evolutionary chain and gain more power, but their minds are too strong for the spikes of the stone mask to penetrate, so they created another mask that can harness the power of not blood, but sunlight. Ironic. With the use of a little bit of string, Joseph is able to rip off AC/DC's arm and melt it with his Hamon. AC/DC responds to this attack by bawling his eyes out and crying like a little girl.
I just can't take it. I just can't take it.
What the hell is this?
Despite the creepiness of the situation, Joseph goes in for the kill, but is stopped when the Pillarman regains his composure.
I feel better now.
Round 2 begins, but Joseph has another trick up his sleeve. Placing string from his hat all over the arena, he created a web-like barrier that will reveal AC/DC's every move and pump him full of Hamon should he dare make a play. In the end, it doesn't even matter, because AC/DC will need another 2,000 years to catch up to Joseph's level of skill. AC/DC explodes in a glorious burst of light and energy, and is no more. Except not really, because his brain and other veins are left intact, and attached himself to Joseph's back, who, after running into Lisa's maidservant, Susie Q, possesses her body to steal the stone. So, after peeping on Lisa in the bath,
Nice.
he breaks into her room to inform her that AC/DC lives and is inside of Suzy-Q. Caesar also bursts into the room and is relieved to see that Joseph had survived his encounter with the Pillarmen. He and Machina had been watching from their battle tower, and seeing as how they're now best friends, they agree to drive the demon out. Once AC/DC dies and Suzy-Q recovers, we learn that AC/DC put the Red Stone on a train to Switzerland, where Cars and Wamu are hiding out. So after quickly packing their things, they head out themselves.
While the initial string hat attack falls under Aspel, Araki gets credit for at least setting up the wool conduction hormone thing beforehand and letting us know about the string trap before Joseph kills AC/DC with it. Right around now is where Caesar gets his development going by telling us how he respects Jojo despite the fact that he's a loud idiot. Lisa's growth is still stunted at this point, leaving her little to do but fill the wise and reserved teacher role that's also an anime trope, but at least we get to see her ass. There's also some light body horror with AC/DC's creepy nervous system brain possessing Suzy-Q, but still nothing as cool as Sanviento.
Joseph and company had caught up to the train on the Switzerland border, but were beaten there by some Nazis. As it turns out, some Nazis had been spying on them and already know about Joseph and Caesar's hormone training, the history of the Red Stone, the battle against AC/DC, and the whereabouts of Cars and Wamu. While the lead officer seems to know Joseph by name, while his identity is unknown, oh, who am I kidding? Remember Major Rudolf von Stroheim? He's back in cyborg form! German science really is the best in the world! Just because he's a Nazi doesn't make him a bad person. After all, would a bad guy show off his incredible new cyborg body by unloading a massive 600 armor-piercing round machine gun chest? Cars is sent flying out of the cabin, but it's here that he shows off his mode. Wamu had mastery of the wind with his divine sandstorm. AC/DC had full control over fire and heat with his burning blood, and Cars controls light itself. With his light mode activated, he unleashes his magnificent Bone Blade, a razor-sharp weapon that juts from his elbow that is so squeaky clean, it looks like it's made of light. Well, actually, thanks to Stroheim's magnifying eyes, we learn that on his blade are thousands of smaller blades, all moving intensely fast like a chainsaw, or arranging like super fast shark teeth. Joseph and Cars get into a scuffle, with Cars eventually falling down into the chasm below, and Caesar helping Joseph up with some icicles stuck together with hormone.
Nice, nice! Real outstanding work, Caesarino.
Lisa decides that it's time for some exposition and tells Joseph of Caesar's backstory and how he was growing up. As it turns out, Caesar and his many family members grew up with their dad, until he wasn't there anymore. Joseph felt like an asshole for being rude without even knowing it, and heads out to catch up with Caesar, with Machina also going to catch up with Caesar. But they both end up being attacked by some weird invisible figure in the wind. The weird invisible man turns out to be Wamu, who everyone thought was in Greece waiting to challenge Joseph. When he heard of AC/DC's passing, he rushed to the call of his master, and was acting like a guard dog to the Hotel of Cars. Joseph and Lisa catch up to Caesar, who rushes in to fight Wamu. Why they don't follow him and fight 3-on-1 makes no sense to me, but in any case, Caesar heads inside after Wamu to make a move. And make a move he does! Not only does he straight up stop Wamu from using his Divine Sandstorm, just by telling him to stop, but he also refines the Zeppeli Hormone Cutter technique. By using his own bubble launcher in tandem with the Hormone Cutter, he's able to make razor-sharp, unpoppable bubbles that work directly to counter Wamu's wind mode. Once the bubbles are in position, they act as lenses and suck up sunlight from a hole in the wall and blast Wamu with it! With his burn black variation, Wamu is getting his ancient ass handed to him and Caesar is ready to go in for the kill. However, all because he wanted to look cool and flashy, he jumped in front of Wamu to deliver the blow, which casted a shadow over Wamu, which allowed him to use his sandstorm and land a direct hit. That is stupid. Oh, and now Joseph and Lisa are just standing outside the battle and not helping. Why? Why don't they go in the moment they realize that Caesar is in trouble? It makes no damn sense. Anyway, the building around them falling apart even more now, and with a significant chunk of the ceiling falling down, it crushes the warrior beneath it.
I don't want to get too deep into tone here because it can be kind of subjective, but I want to touch upon how Araki really likes to show his characters getting murdered in comedically gruesome ways, but it's supposed to always be taken seriously? I'm sorry, David Productions, but no amount of dramatic Italian opera is going to cover up the fact that Caesar just had a Wile E. Coyote death over here.
There's no time for this though, as it's finally time for Wamu and Joseph's long-awaited battle to begin. They have a chariot race with zombie horses to the death. Donning Caesar's bandana, our Joestar hero prepares to take his best friend into battle with him. Joseph picks up a giant crossbow, but is unable to use it, seeing as how it's giant. He got greedy with a big weapon, and now he's hurting himself because of it. On the ground, it seems like the crossbow was able to cock itself thanks to the weight of Joseph dragging it with him, and with that in mind, a barely breathing Joestar sets a trap as he waits for Wamuu. He fires, but misses due to his injuries, so he begs for mercy and throws rocks. This was a ploy, of course, because after doing his line prediction thing, he watches as Wamuu is impaled from behind, donutted by the same iron ball that ricocheted off the walls of the arena. Wamuu does not admit defeat and launches his separated arms through his chest, pinning Joseph against the flame in the middle of the arena, all while strangling him. He can't produce any more Hamon, and he can't defend himself. This is when Wamuu enters his final and most dangerous mode, his atmospheric rift. By sucking in huge amounts of air, he shoots it out compressed enough to slice through stone. Joseph gets the idea to use a firebomb, which for some reason he had, and throws it at the Pillarman, who dodges it. Then, he lights Caesar's bandana on fire and chucks it towards the flame. This ignites the tossed firebomb even further, surrounding Wamuu with fire that he soon sucks into his body, resulting in him bursting into flames. His body destroyed and reduced to nothing but a talking head, Wamuu prepares for his death. Joseph smashes his hand on the ground to give Wamuu some of his blood to ease the pain of his demise. He did this not out of pity, but of respect as a warrior. Just as he respected AC/DC for willing to die for his cause, he respects Wamuu as a proud warrior who fought to a righteous end. After saving Joseph from some vampires, Wamuu exclaims that he will not allow anyone to harm the one that bested him fair and square. In a way, this is similar to Jojo and Dio's relationship. Jojo was the only one who was able to beat Dio and also left him as nothing but a head, and so respect was gained. As a fighter, Joseph stands taller than Wamuu of the Pillarmen, who viewed immortality as a trivial thing. He lived all those years only by his code of honor and somehow knows that he survived for 12,000 years just to meet Joseph at the end. Proud of his strength and growth as a warrior, Wamuu accepts his death with a smile. After Joseph takes the antidote as one last favor to him, Wamuu succumbs to his Hamon wounds and crumbles to pieces. Joseph gives his enemy and bizarre friend one final salute as he passed. Wamuu had become one with the wind, an honorable man from birth to death.
The amount of screen time that Wamuu gets in this final act is kind of what saves it for me, because he's one of the bright spots in part 2 that I genuinely enjoy. What he lacks in motivation, he makes up for by actually having a set code of honor, and is the only Pillarman out of the main 3 that remains stoic and cool, and does not participate in buffoonery. Because the final entire act with Cars is just completely ridiculous. The way he turns into a bird, the way Joseph has to crash the plane. Honestly, it's mostly Joseph bringing down Cars' serious aspect, but he also does that stupid thing where he pinballs around, and that's dumb. And I don't even have to bring up how AC/DC crying ruins the tone of this really serious battle, because like Joseph's trainer just got like murdered and it's super tense, but then he does a stupid crying thing. It's like, it's funny, sure, but it breaks the tone. Wamuu doesn't have a moment like that. The closest he gets is, I guess, his talking head, but that doesn't really count.
But this fight isn't over yet! There's still Lord Cars to deal with! The turban is off, and the magnificent hair is unleashed. Cars and Lisa get ready to do battle on the top of the ruins of Piz Berlina with Joseph and the vampire army as spectators. Her scarf is all that she needs, and with a quick wraparound, Cars is sent a blast of Hamon to the face, knocking him down. This victory is short-lived though, as Lisa gets a stab through the chest by the real Cars. The look-alike melts away and Lisa falls unconscious. All that build up to a great Lisa fight, and it's whisked away like an angel's kiss. This is the Jojo show, after all. All seems lost until a random burst of light appears. Is it the sunshine finally coming out? No, even better than that! The Nazis are here to save the day! Major von Stroheim arrives with a fleet of the SS along with Speedwagon and his Foundation's Special Forces. Oh, and Smokey Brown is also there for some reason. But they're all here to help Joseph achieve victory. With ultraviolet light cannons and anti-vampire technology, the Nazis help to wipe out the zombie army. Cars doesn't like playing games, so he threatens to cut the rope, keeping his opponents together, which he does. What he didn't realize is that by swinging around so much, Joseph actually tied some rope onto Cars' legs and his own, so even if the rope is cut, Cars' weight will keep them up. Joseph is able to propel himself upward and hit Cars with a Hamon overdrive to the arm, using the very last amount of Hamon he had in his body. Luckily it hit, and Joseph uses the rope to pull Lisa up and send Cars down, crashing through the spikes and impaling himself below. Catching his coach in his arms, it's here we get a bombshell of info regarding Lisa thanks to Speedwagon telling Smokey. Lisa was the baby that Arena Joestar saved, but if you remember, Arena obviously had a child as well. The boy she had, of course, fell in love with Lisa, whose real name is revealed to be Elizabeth. The son of Arena and Jonathan Joestar, George Joestar II, marries Elizabeth Joestar. Lisa is Joseph's mom! George II, despite being a master pilot and soldier, he couldn't stand up though to a terror from the past. When dealing with all the zombies that Dio had created, apparently one had escaped and blended into society by acting like a paraplegic and getting rid of any evidence of his killings. Somehow, he ended up becoming captain of the British Air Force, presumably to get revenge on George for what his father did to Dio. George was smart and knew all about zombies and vampires, thanks to hearing stories from Speedwagon, Arena, and Straizo. But unfortunately, despite having more than the capability to use and master Hormone, he was never trained in the arts and was killed by the zombie before he could inform everyone of his true identity. When Elizabeth learned of this, she went berserk, storming into the army headquarters and murdering the zombie then and there. Branded an international criminal, she went into hiding and was effectively erased from existence thanks to the Speedwagon Foundation. Unable to raise Joseph, she asks Speedwagon and the others to tell him that both of his parents died in the war and disease. Speaking of her, Joseph carries her to safety while Major von Stroheim prepares to fire a UV-enhancing cannon of light to obliterate Cars. The cannon is ready to fire, but Cars never lost possession of the Red Stone of Asia, so after pulling a stone mask out of his ass, he shows us that he has everything he needs to utilize the Red Stone's power. Unable to stop the UV cannon, he's blasted at full force and finally ascends. Cars the Pillar Man is no more. He's now Cars, the ultimate life form. The peak of evolution, Cars has mastery over all of organic life that has ever lived or ever will live. Now being immune to sunlight, he basks in the sun rays, showing off that he has truly won. Even Speedwagon is afraid of the upcoming human extinction, but not to worry because Joseph Joestar has a plan. One last-ditch final plan that he urges everyone to take part in until their last breath. Grabbing the red stone, he runs for his life, with Smokey tailing after him. Cars shrieks, grows wings, and flies after him. Joseph reminds Smokey that he doesn't have to run with him because Cars is only after him, while Smokey still feels the need to try and tell Joseph that Lisa is his mom. Hitching a ride in the plane that the Germans came in, Joseph continues his attempt at running away. Joseph has an actual plan now. Earth gave Cars his power, and Earth can take it back. He's going to launch Cars into the volcano on Italy's Isle del Volgano. Cars turned his feathers into piranhas and are biting up the plane in a parachute. The trouble doesn't stop there because some of the feathers also turn into an octopus whose tentacles grab the propeller of the plane, causing a breakdown. Joseph jumps from the plane via a spare parachute, but Cars expected a foolish plan like that and was already flying in for the kill, but this was actually just a decoy dummy. Joseph never left the plane and crashes it into Cars. Joseph is a Joestar after all, and he isn't going down without a fight. Just like how Jonathan went out with Dio, Jojo is prepared to go down with Cars. Shouter the Pillar Hog tries to escape but is pinned down by a mechanical arm shot from the socket of Major von Stroheim, who had been hiding in the pontoon of the plane. The two of them jump with von Stroheim's legs bursting from impact, sending him and Jojo backwards and away from the lava. A massive eruption occurs with Cars landing in the hot stuff and the plane exploding right on top of him. Victory is finally achieved, with Cars succumbing to the heat of the volcano and melting. His healing factor just wasn't fast enough. Barely managing to stand, Jojo grabs Stroheim and walks away from the crater, planning on celebrating on more stable ground and avoiding any eruptions. The celebration is cut short when, out from a crack in the floor, comes a swift slice of a blade. Joseph's arm is cut clean off and falls to the floor, with lava shooting out from the crack and Cars right along with it! As Joseph screams in pain, Cars is relaxed to finally hear his favorite song playing.
Music to my ears. You performed that aria perfectly. I've so longed to hear you sing it, Jojo.
In a move of pure desperation, Joseph tries to use a hormone overdrive on Cars, who counters this by using his own overdrive. That's right, Cars himself has mastered hormone. He conquered the sun itself. What makes you think he couldn't learn and master hormone? A small detail in the anime that I really love is that Cars' hormone is so powerful that it's red. That's terrifyingly strong, and it's over 100 times more potent than that of Joseph or Lisa's hormone combined. Combine that with the red stone's natural ability to amplify and concentrate hormone over 1 billion times, and what you have is 100 billion times of concentrated hormone shooting directly into a volcano. The volcano erupts, sending Jojo and Cars flying into the atmosphere on a chunk of rock, the pressure keeping both of them pinned down. When Cars attempts to fly away, Jojo's fallen arm launches forward and latches onto Cars' neck, preventing him from dodging some oncoming rocks. These rocks launch Cars even higher into the stratosphere, with his last words asking how Jojo always knows what's going to happen, how he managed to plan every last detail. Jojo of course laughs and proclaims that he knew everything, and it all worked out like clockwork. Really, he just got lucky, but thinking he outsmarted him will drive Cars nuts. Cars is sent hurtling into space and is soon consumed by the vacuum and freezing in place. Turning to stone, Cars is left floating through the cosmic void, never to return. Despite wishing for death, Cars could not die, and eventually, he stopped thinking. Eight hours later, Stroheim arrived back to the others and relayed the information of what had happened, and on February 28, 1938, Joseph Joestar died. Then some jackass shows up and starts causing a scene, which makes all the others gasp in surprise. Yeah, that jackass is of course Joseph! No plane crash or volcano can kill Joseph Joestar! Here, we're told that Jojo married Susie Q after crash landing in the ocean via protection from the rock. Sometime later, Elizabeth Joestar revealed to Jojo that she was his mom. Her, Jojo, and Susie Q would move to New York, and in 1948 she would find love again and marry a Hollywood screenwriter. Jojo and Susie Q would go on to found Joestar Realty and become a world-famous corporation. Smokey Brown worked his way through college and after majoring in political science would become the first black mayor in his home state of Georgia. Irina Joestar would continue her life as a teacher until her peaceful death in 1950, surrounded by those that loved her. Robert Edwin O. Speedwagon would go on to further science, medicine, and technology for years until his death via a heart attack in 1952, aged 89. A lifelong bachelor, he never settled down or had kids, leaving no family of his own behind.
Major Rudolf von Stroheim would never see Jojo again. He died in 1943 at the Battle of Stalingrad, a fearsome example of the German science he'd always championed.
Our technology is the greatest!
And so the years went by, giving way to a new generation. And in 1983, a 66-year-old Joseph Joestar is in the JFK National Airport on his way to Japan.
Hey, wait a sec. You're Japanese, aren't you?
I am. Why do you ask?
In that case, watch your damn bag!
His only daughter, Holly, had married a Japanese man on the other side of the world and never came home again. And for that,
I'll never forgive the Japanese!
Although, he does like his Walkman. I'd say that Battle Tendency is a fun follow-up to Phantom Blood that takes its predecessor's concepts and builds upon them to the fullest. We see the great potential Hamon had in the first part fulfilled with all kinds of amazing ways to utilize this power. Joseph Joestar is an awesome protagonist who's always one step ahead of the curve. He's cocky, and I wouldn't have it any other way. The supporting cast is awesome too. Lisa's a badass lady who can whoop your butt 6 ways till Sunday. Smokey's a great comic relief and could have easily filled the role of Avdol in part 3. Of course, it was great to see Speedwagon again, despite his diminished role, and obviously, Caesar Zeppeli brings his family name great honor here. He's a hero to the end, and despite coming off as a jerk, still has a heart of gold. I'll leave most of the nitpicking and complaining to my friend here, but let me get out some of my own gripes, alright? The progression from Jojo and Caesar going from hate each other to suddenly being best bros is a bit too fast. Yes, through their training, they bonded like brothers, but it's a complete 180 in terms of personality. Not learning enough of Lisa early on can also be off-putting. Who's she, and how does she suddenly get all these awesome powers? Straight so being a villain for no reason makes no sense. Why suddenly make him a filler villain, just to show off that Joseph can use the Ripple? Oh, and speaking of filler, there's plenty of filler characters, like Donovan the Cactus Man, who I didn't even bring up in the video, Wired Beck, Machina and Logs themselves. You could even argue that San Viento himself was a filler character due to him coming and going within one episode. Speaking of wasted characters, George too is a wasted character, and it makes literally no sense as to why he wasn't trained in the way of Sendo. If Lisa was trained growing up, why not George? Why not train them at the same time? As the son of Jonathan Joestar, he obviously had potential. It even says so in writing. Yet here he is, a character is wasted and forgotten whenever anyone brings him up. He's so insignificant that you can barely find videos of him on YouTube. You know how hard it was to find his death scene? Nobody ever talks about him. I'll let Jabroni go into more detail on that, so let me go back to being positive.
In conclusion, I don't really think Part 2 is the worst thing ever. I did have a lot of negative things to say about it, but there's some stuff about it that I liked. I like the body horror I mentioned earlier. I like Wamu. Joseph isn't really that terrible. I don't like Caesar, but I didn't really talk about him too much, partially because there's not a lot to say. Yeah, I guess I really don't actually like this part. Never mind.
Overall, I'd say that Part 2 is phenomenal, and while my co-host might not think the same thing, you should definitely check it out. With Parts 1 and 2 come and gone, join me next time to look at what many people consider to be an entry point in the series, despite it being Part 3. Do not skip parts, people, no matter what you're told. Consider subbing if you haven't already, and check out my Patreon if you want some hands-on updates and future videos with all kinds of perks and benefits. Patreon is really what keeps me going, so I have to thank you guys for supporting me there, and on YouTube. So please, won't you all join me next time for JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3, Stardust Crusaders.